Hi, everyone. Ali here, co-founder of Infracost, and welcome to the October community update. We normally have these early in the month, but last week was HashiConf, where I had a chance to meet and speak with a lot of the community members, which was awesome. So sorry about the delay. We've got three main updates today with Infracost v0.10.12 and Infracost Cloud as well. So I'll go through those and happy to continue the conversation on our Slack chat if you have any questions as well. So let me share my screen. The first thing I want to talk about is an update to our usage file. So a refresher that for resources such as Lambda or S3, Infracost shows the price of those resources, but the cost depends on usage. So users can define that usage in a YAML file for their resources and then generate a cost estimate as shown here. So here's an example of me defining a usage for a Lambda function called hi, and then here's the cost. So when I run Infracost with the usage file, I get the actual costs. A few months ago, we had this really great use case from IBM who wanted to support the same idea as the usage file, but without having to specify the resource ID. So having some way to say, all my Lambda functions should get this usage profile. And really, this is helpful when you're dealing with t-shirt size applications, when you have many, many applications and you're trying to just say, hey, what would be the usage of these applications in terms of cost if we just split them into low, medium, high? So you can create, let's say, 3 files, YAML files, where you're just defining rough estimates without having to, excuse me, define the individual resource IDs to say, hey, what if low usage means this in our organization, medium means this, and high means this. So when I have that, I can just copy that. I can just create a file with that name or whatever name I want it to be. I can copy that in here. And now if I run Infracost breakdown against my project, here's an AWS Terraform project. You can see my Lambda function shows a default behavior, which is just cost depends on usage. Now, if I pass in the usage file, and this is going to be the high profile we created. Remember, there's no resource IDs. This is a generic usage that's applied to all my Lambda functions. I now get this. So I can quickly experiment with the cost of my applications without having to define all those individual resource IDs. So like I mentioned, this is live in Infracost version 10.12. You can use it now, and there's some examples in our docs in the usage-based resources page. We're going to be doing a lot more around the usage to bring in the usage data and make it easier for you to do that. So keep the feedback coming and let us know what you would like to see next. Moving on to our second update, it's really focusing on the integrations pieces, and it's the new GitHub app. So as you're already familiar, there are many CI/CD integrations for Infracost. And even if you're using any of these third-party systems like Spacelift or M0 or Terraform Cloud, they all use Infracost behind the scenes as well. So our aim is to kind of make Infracost work in your workflow, regardless of what that workflow looks like. One thing we've heard a lot from larger companies is that while it's easy to enable Infracost with GitHub Actions on one app, when I have 10, 20, 30, or a lot more infrastructure repos, it is painful to copy paste and go through that flow separately. So this is why we created a new GitHub app, which is a managed integration. And that means that Infracost is running on our infrastructure. We keep the CLI version up to date. We make sure it's scaled, and it just kind of runs easily for you. How does it work? I'll give you a quick demo now. So I've got a new organization I've created. As you can see, it's a brand new organization in Infracost Cloud. I come into the integrations page. I can call GitHub. I've already gone through this flow with my users, but I'll show you what it looks like. I can pick the organization I want to install the Infracost app into. And then I can decide, do I want to give access to all my repos or only selected repos? What we commonly see is people start with a few repos and then they keep adding more. Usually you start with a test repo. So I've got an example, Terraform repo here. I click on install, and that will then install the application, and then it will redirect back to Infracost, where I can now select my repos. I click on next. If you have private Terraform modules that live on Terraform Cloud or GitLab's registry, you can provide the token and the endpoint, and Infracost will then fetch those private registry modules or any variables you have there. And if you have private Git modules that live on a private repo somewhere, you can provide your SSH key. So the Infracost CLI can clone those repos in the same way that Terraform clones those repos. So remember that the GitHub app integration is parsing the Terraform HCL code directly, because there's no planned JSON file at this stage. It's just Infracost connecting to your source control system. So in this example, I don't have any of those, so I just click on complete. And it's as simple as that. So you can see within a minute, I can get Infracost running. It's asking me now to go create a pull request in the repo to see the cost estimate. And by default, we also show the main branch cost as well. So whenever you add the repo, the main branch is fetched, and we run Infracost breakdown on that. So you can get a breakdown of that itself, like I can see here. So I can see all those cost estimates, and I can see which commit it's from. I can see the branch and when it was generated. And then if I go into my example repo, and if I open a pull request, I will see the cost estimate left here. So notice that the icon here is the Infracost logo, because this is our official app. It is not the Infracost GitHub Actions, which has a different icon. In terms of functionality, it's more or less the same. It just means you can now deploy Infracost to tens or hundreds of repos very quickly, and get that consistent kind of configuration working across. If you need to customize how Infracost runs for a repository, you can go to our docs, and there's a link here to our config file. So if you just add an infracost.yaml at the root of the repository, and that YAML file can contain the configuration, so it can point to your Terraform var files. It can customize what Infracost should call this name and the path of the various directories. Infracost's GitHub app will automatically pick up this YAML file at the root of the repo, and it will use that. In the same way, if you want to use usage profiles or usage files, as I just mentioned, you can create a file called infracost.usage.yaml at the root of the repository. And again, the app will pick that up automatically. So this GitHub app is now live. The docs are here in the integrations page, GitHub app. If you're already using the GitHub Actions, note that this GitHub app is part of Infracost Cloud, which is our SaaS product, our paid SaaS product. If you'd like to migrate over, you can just enable it so they can run side by side. You can test it to make sure you're happy with it, the GitHub app. And then once you're happy with that, you can just delete the old GitHub Actions YAML that you had added for Infracost from your repo. It's as simple as that. we're working through our SOC 2 audit process just now. We have a new security page, which is linked to here at the bottom, that explains our processes. So that's also coming up. And on that note, there's also a brand new products page, which explains the various Infracost workflows. So if you're an individual contributor, you can use our VS Code extension. If you're a dev team or an eng team, you can use our CI/CD integrations, as I just mentioned. And for team leads and infrastructure managers or platform teams and FinOps teams, we have Infracost Cloud, which allows you to do things like customize the price books to take into account the enterprise discounts, and you get things like the automated integrations with GitHub app and a lot more coming in the future. One of those things that we released as part of Infracost Cloud is a weekly summary report. So normally we see team leads, FinOps, and infrastructure managers, infrastructure team management. They're busy people. And instead of having to log in to the Infracost Cloud dashboard to see what's coming up, they can get a weekly report, which just shows them the most impactful changes, the repositories, the projects, which can be workspaces or modules for monorepos, and the individual users who are working on the most impactful changes when it comes to cost. You can then also see a summary that if all those pull requests are merged, here are the ones that are going to increase your costs, here are the ones that are going to decrease your costs, and here's the net cost of all those pull requests that are, once merged, they're essentially going to they're going to hit your cloud bill. So they're going to shift from being estimated costs to actual costs. So by seeing a weekly report, you can focus on just those most impactful changes. You can then jump into Infracost Cloud. Like here, you can then click on those pull requests, you can see the numbers, and you can jump into the pull request to guide the team and help them make better decisions. We also see it a lot that the team leads or people who are essentially responsible for the cloud bill, including the FinOps teams, they want to get a heads up of what's coming up because they need to maybe readjust budgets or reset expectations. So instead of having to manually go around the individual dev teams and ask them, hey, what's coming up, what's interesting, what's not, by using Infracost Cloud and just looking at the dashboard, they can kind of get an instant view of all the various pull requests that are being worked on and their various cost impacts. There's a new date picker in Infracost Cloud too, so you can zoom in on the interesting date ranges if there's an actual cost spike and you want to zoom in to see what were all the pull requests that were merged or they were being worked on at that date range. And also you can, if you have multiple main branches, like you have a development branch, you have staging branches, you have QA branches, you can filter in on only the branches you care about. So you can kind of reduce noise from this chart. So there we have it, the brand new usage profiles, the new GitHub app, the new weekly reports, including all the new filters I showed you. These are all live. Check them out and let us know what you think. Until the next community call, thanks everyone.